Hello and welcome again to this webinar. I really appreciate you taking time from your busy schedules to join it with us today to learn just a little bit more about JobAccess and how it can complement and value add to the processes that you have in place today. My name is Debbie Roscoe and I am a National Disability Coordination Officer based in Queensland. It is great to be joining you today on behalf of Australian Disability Clearinghouse on Education and Training, or as we commonly refer to it in its acronym, ADCET. So both our programs, the NDCO and ADCET, are federally government funded through the Department of Education. And we have a focus on tertiary education and also in moving students who have graduated into relevant tertiary and graduate employment. So this today, our webinar is live captioned and it is also Auslan interpreted. I know that we have been using Zoom and Teams for some time, so to just as a refresher, to activate the captions, please click the CC button either at the top or the bottom of your toolbar. And we will also have the captions available in your browser if you prefer that, and we'll put that in the chat box now. I'm very fortunate to be based on Gubbi Gubbi lands, situated in southeast Queensland. It's quite a large area and encompasses the regional councils of Moreton Bay, Sunshine Coast, Noosa, Gympie, and the Wide Bay area. In the spirit of reconciliation, we respectfully acknowledge and recognise the Aboriginal history and culture of the land that I'm on, and I pay respects to elders past and present. I'd also acknowledge all the country participating in this webinar and also acknowledge their elders and ancestors and their legacy to us, and also any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in the webinar today. Just a few little housekeeping before we start. As I mentioned, the webinar is live captioned. I'd like to welcome Sharon from Bradley Reporting. Thank you for being with us, Sharon. And also Auslan interpreted. So thank you, Andre, for being with us. And we will have you spotlighted for this presentation. The webinar is also being recorded. It'll be ready for viewing on the ADCET website in the coming days. The other way to get the recording and also to be aware of future webinars is you can register online to receive the Adsense Newsletters, which is full of information around tertiary education for people with disability and also in the employment phase. So you can register for that, and I said that will be in the chat box. Any difficulties today, please don't hesitate to get in contact. Email admin@adcet.edu.au, and we'll also put that in the chat box. So please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We have a wonderful presentation today from Daniel from JobAccess. We've worked with Daniel for quite some time, and all his presentations are extremely popular, and we get lots of requests for repeats. So you'll receive lots of great information today from Daniel. He will talk for around 45 minutes. Then we're going to have the opportunity for Daniel to answer any questions. So I noticed that Daniel has brought some of his own, some of the common inquiries received from employers. So it may even encompass some of the questions that you have had as well. Throughout the presentation, we really encourage, communication between each other. So please feel free to use the chat box. And if you could use panelists and attendees, we will all be able to interact and really get the most out of this webinar today. Daniel, of course, will answer questions. However, during the presentation, we have one of his colleagues, Daraj, who has joined us, and he's going to have a look at some of those generic questions. So you may get your answer as we proceed through the webinar. So please don't hold back on any questions. This is your opportunity to see how this great program is able to benefit. So let's start. I'm really happy to introduce Daniel, who is the General Manager for JobAccess. As you would have read in his bio, Daniel comes with a wealth of experience in the disability sector and has, for a few years now, in his current role, managed a team which has delivered award-winning services on behalf of the Australian government. It's the national hub for workplace, employment, information for people with disability, employers, and also service providers. So it's really good to be working with you again, Daniel, and I'm going to hand over to you and I'll come back when we get to the questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for the warm welcome as well. And thank you for muting your microphone at the very beginning. That reminded me that I needed to unmute mine. Hello, everyone, and thank you to the ADCET and the NDCO for organizing and inviting JobAccess to deliver this webinar today. It's great to be here with you, and we've done work with the NDCO, as Debbie said, for a long time. And as a matter of fact, it was the first ever presentation that we had as a webinar format. So, Ujjirit Kamaru means hello in Gadigal language, the traditional custodians of the land on which the Sydney CBD is built. I want to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land I am on today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And as we are attendees from multiple regions, I would like to acknowledge traditional owners throughout Australia and recognize their continuing connections to land, waters, and culture, and also express my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We need to acknowledge and custodianship of this beautiful country now more than ever. As I was said, my name is Daniel Valiente Riddle, and I'm the General Manager of JobAccess. And thank you to everyone who is joining us today. Two things that I like to disclose before I start any presentation is one, that I don't have experience of living with disability, any lived experience of disability, but I was brought up in a small village, which takes me to my second disclosure, that I know that I've got an accent and I sound like Puss in Boots. But in this little village, it was a very close type community, and I was brought up by a person living with chronic schizophrenia. My great auntie heard voices continuously, and we lived with her. During the process of living with her, I always noticed that nobody was afraid to come into my house. Neighbors will send their kids to have lunch or dinner with us or to play at my house without any extra supervision. My auntie was just part of the normal experience of human diversity. And it was surprising once I got out of that environment to know that my auntie's situation was one to be feared, one to be avoided. That's why I'm really passionate about this topic. And various studies have reinforced the long-term benefits of employing people with disabilities, yet they are twice as likely to be unemployed and stay out of work for at least 1 year compared to their peers without a disability. And these employment patterns are similar also for graduates with a disability. As tertiary providers, you play a vital role in closing the employment gap by supporting graduates with a disability and employing people with disability more broadly within your organizations. I'm very proud to say that JobAccess employs 47% of people with disabilities within our ranks. Organizations should be representing the communities that they serve. Today, we will discuss a range of services that you can access at not cost at all to support your teams. So today we will cover the range of free support and service available through JobAccess. What are workplaces adjustments in reality, and how to support staff with adjustments, and how to access funding for adjustments through JobAccess and Employment Assistance Fund, or EAF, which I will talk in much more detail. We will also talk about how JobAccess can help employers gain confidence in recruiting and retaining people with disabilities. And then, as Debbie mentioned, we will open up to the audience for questions. So let's start today's session by looking at what actually JobAccess do. JobAccess is the national hub for disability employment for people with disabilities, employers, and service providers. It is a free service that helps remove barriers to disability employment. Our range of services includes a dedicated advice service via phone and website. So we operate a national call center. The number is 1-800-464-800 and is delivered by a frontline professionals who provide free, confidential, and expert advice. Our advisors are available to answer your questions on matters related to disability employment or can direct you to other support services. JobAccess also has a comprehensive website at www.jobaccess.gov.au with information and advice on disability employment. As mentioned before, we also coordinate workplace modifications and adjustments through the Employment Assistance Fund, or EAF. I will talk about more about later in the session. We also run the National Disability Recruitment Coordinator, which is the employer engagement service of JobAccess, working with large employers, including tertiary institutions such as UTS and some TAFEs across Australia to increase the disability confidence. Later in the presentation, I will discuss how employers can engage with the NDRC. We also have the Complaint Resolution and Referral Service, which aims to improve government-funded employment disability support services through a fair and impartial complaint resolution process. And lastly, the National Disability Abuse and Neglect Hotline, which we refer as the hotline, which is a vital reporting and information service available to anybody that suspects abuse and neglect of a person with a disability. Now, some of you may know what workplace adjustments are. However, for the benefits of everyone, let's start by defining the term. So workplace adjustments or reasonable adjustments are administrative, environmental, or procedural changes that enables people with disability to equitable employment opportunities and work effectively and comfortably. Not all people with disabilities will require adjustments. However, knowing how to provide adjustments can help employers attract and employ people with disability from a wider talent pool. And also remember, you are not alone. You've got a lot of services out there that will be able to support you, such as JobAccess. Last year, JobAccess undertook national research to gauge awareness about workplace adjustments and among employers and people with disabilities for that matter. And the survey revealed that 7 in 10 people haven't heard of workplace adjustments. As some of you may know, workplace adjustments can be one of the most effective tools to help people with disabilities to gain employment and retain employment. Another astonishing piece of data was that 66% of people with disabilities were not aware of workplace adjustments. If people with disabilities require adjustments at work and are unaware of this support, it can really adversely impact their decision about employment and career goals. And their absence from the talent pool means employers miss out on their potential. Also, 1 in 3 people consider workplace adjustments as something easy to organize. We also found that 2 in 5 people estimated the cost of adjustments to be significant. 35% of people said discussing workplace adjustments was outside their comfort zone, while a whopping 61% were unsure or did not know how to arrange workplace adjustments to support employees with a disability. Making adjustments has a clear, wide-ranging business benefit. It can help increase the work performance of employees with a disability by providing the right tools to do the job. It can increase retention of productive and committed staff who may acquire a disability during their employment. Nobody is immune to disability. Increase staff capabilities. Some adjustments can enable employees to perform tasks that they weren't able to perform before the changes were put in place. It can also improve access to buildings and rooms by other people and customers, potentially even broadening your customer base to include people with disabilities. Lastly, and more importantly, become part of your day-to-day work practice for all employees by integrating workplace adjustments into your business process rather than just being an afterthought. In here, consider the impact of COVID-19 and how many businesses move to remote and flexible working arrangements for employees, and hopefully that will be something that will be advantageous for people with disabilities. So adjustments can be made to our physical environment, workplace practices and policies, and training resources to help improve accessibility and inclusion. In terms of physical environment, the physical adjustments refer to any changes made to the structure, surrounding, or furnishing and fitting within a workplace to remove barriers and improve access for people with disabilities. Most physical changes needed to improve access are minor, such as desk or installing a brighter lighting. Occasionally, a more significant adjustment may be required, such as installing ramp, automatic door openers, or visual fire alarms. You can also make deep changes to your recruitment process. This can include making all recruitment materials available in accessible or alternative formats, such as position description, application forms, and questionnaires. You can remove medical tests or aptitude tests that are unrelated to the essential job requirements. You can also provide alternative formats of assessment test papers, for example, in audio or large print versions. Allowing the candidate to present their answers using an alternative methods, for example, verbally rather than in writing. Allowing candidates additional time to complete exams or selection tests, particularly for individuals with dyslexia or other learning difficulties. You can also organize the interview in an accessible venue. You can provide an interpreter, for example, for a candidate who communicates using sign language. Fund for this is also available through the Employment Assistance Fund to organize an Auslan interpreter to participate in the interview equitably. You can also make changes to the job design process. This can include flexibility with work hours, job sharing, so more than one person does the job, and it can be an option also if employers want to work part-time for the job that is available, if the job needs to be full-time. You can also job card, allocating some duties from or from another employee. And you can customize employment. This is the type of job creation for people with more significant disabilities. And in terms of training and development, this can include introducing a workplace buddy or a mentor system, allowing external support workers from specialist employment or disability services on site if necessary for orientation and learning assistance, extending training time or probation for workers with cognitive impairment or learning disabilities. Or you can also arrange general or specific disability awareness training for co-workers, supervisors, and managers. So making adjustments in the workplace isn't costly or complicated. The Australian Government Employment Assistance Fund is available for people with disabilities who are about to start a job or who are currently working and who help buy workplace-related modifications and services. So JobAccess works with the National Panel of Assessors to conduct free workplace assessments and advise on modifications and adjustments and support at no cost at all. Funding may be available for a wide range of support, from adjustments or special equipment for the physical workplaces to information and communication devices and Auslan interpreting. The EAF can also support with funding for specialist service for employees with a specific learning disorder and mental health conditions, organizing disability-specific awareness training to support managers and colleagues on how to best interact with the employee with a disability, deafness awareness training, mental health first aid training in the workplace as well. It is important to remember that workplace assessments and funding through the JobAccess is to help identify disability-specific solutions in the workplace. It is not to conduct an ergonomic assessment. Anyone will benefit from an ergonomic assessment, and it is the employer's duty of care to ensure an ergonomic assessment is set up. As an employer, you are responsible for ensuring your staff are provided with the right tools to do their job. This includes the desk, the chair, the telephone, the computer, amongst others. But research makes it clear how everyone benefits from altering postures throughout the day, making this an ergonomic issue and not necessarily a disability-specific issue. Many adjustments are low cost or no cost at all. That is also about putting reasonable adjustments in place. This include flexible work hours and working from home arrangements. And we've all seen this through the pandemic as well. Moving where someone is sitting in an open plan area so they are not distracted in terms of people that live with neurodiversity, or surprise, deaf, hard of hearing people if sitting in a high traffic area, for example. These flexible work arrangements can also assist other staff with their work-life balance requirements. Employers can apply for the EAF funding through the JobAccess website, or simply call us on 1-800-464-800 to speak with our advisors, who will be happy to guide you through the process. Employers, employees, and service providers can make an application for workplace modifications. For our discussion today, we will talk about the employee application process. So employers can submit an online application at www.jobaccess.gov.au. JobAccess will assess the application, and your organization will let you know your organization about the outcome. If the application is successful, JobAccess will also advise if a workplace assessment is required. If a workplace assessment is not required, your organization can purchase the modifications or adjustments and have all the costs reimbursed by JobAccess. If workplace assessment is needed, JobAccess will arrange a specialist at no cost to you at all to assess the workplace and look at the changes that may be required. The assessor will visit and look at your workplace, identify any barriers that may exist, and talk to you and the employee to find solutions to make the workplace more accessible and flexible. Your organization then can purchase the modifications and have the cost of reimbursement by JobAccess. When making an application, remember to check if the employee is eligible, and we'll talk about more of that in the next slide. Complete all parts of the application, provide the required supporting documentation, and don't purchase anything until after your application has been approved. The best part of all of this is that you don't have to go at it alone. We are here to help you. JobAccess advisors will manage the process and answer any inquiries that you may have. And the detailed guidelines on the Employment Assistance Fund are also available on the JobAccess website. I really encourage you to go and look at them. So in order to be eligible for funding, to make any workplace modifications and adjustments, there are certain criteria that applicants need to meet. They need to work at least 8 hours per week. If they're self-employment, work at least 8 hours per week, earn an hourly income at least equivalent to the national minimum wage. You also have to be in a job that is expected to be continued for at least 13 weeks. You have to be an Australian citizen or a permanent resident and have an ongoing disability that has lasted or will last at least 2 years. And disability must limit, restrict, or impair your ability to work. A job seeker with a job plan may also be eligible to apply. Again, our professional advisors are available to assist you with any queries that you may have regarding the eligibility for the Employment Assistance Fund. It is important to identify who will own the modifications when the item or items have been approved. Ownership must be confirmed in writing before approval of the EAF application, as it will determine who is responsible for the maintenance or repair, and what will happen to the modifications if the employee with a disability changes jobs, and the responsibility for the ongoing maintenance, repair, or replacement of the modifications lies with the owner. When the employee changes jobs, portable modifications should move with the employee. However, if the employee does not own the modifications, then the owner should ensure that the portable modification should either move with the person with a disability to the new job, or where the employee has a provider, transfer the modifications to their employer to be used by another person with a disability, or is retained in the workplace to be used by another person with similar needs. Again, we are there to support you. Give us a call. We will be able to advise you on all of these. It is not difficult when you've got somebody on the other line, just providing you the precise information that you are requiring. But apart from physical modifications and adjustments in the workplace, employees can also access funding support for Auslan interpreting, for job interviews and related activities, such as site visits, completion of tests, and information sessions for people who are deaf or have hearing impairments. It can be used for awareness training. This can include generic disability awareness training, deafness awareness training, and mental health awareness training. The EAF also can provide $1,500 per year to employers for each eligible employee. So if there is 2 employers, that is $3,000. If there is 3 employees, that is $4,500 to conduct training at the workplace. Training is conducted always by a reputable organization and delivered by qualified professionals with specialist expertise. The training seek to increase awareness, reduce stigma, improve attitudes, as well as increasing the confidence of employers and co-workers, for that matter, to assist someone in seeking help. It can also provide specialist support. Here too, the EAF can provide $1,500 per year to employers for each eligible employee to access specialist service. This support is directed and enabling a specialist to work with the employee or employer to establish and provide a practical plan or work-based intervention aiming to meet the workplace goals as identified. And this is what I get to brag about, the service that I'm so proud to lead. Since 2006, JobAccess has managed over 60,000 applications for workplace modifications and adjustments. And each of them have made a difference. The feedback from employees we have received regarding workplace modifications that were made through the Employment Assistance Fund show us that 96% of employees were still employed 3 months after receiving the Employment Assistance funding. 95% of employers indicated that employees were more productive post-implementation of the work modifications. And to me, this statistic is the one that really reflects and resonates with the work that we do. 100% of employers indicated that the EAF provided the help it was intended to. So we are doing what we are meant to be doing as a service. Let's take a look at the National Disability Recruitment Coordinator, which is the employer engagement service of JobAccess. The NDRC partners with large employers to remove barriers in recruitment and other employment practices to give organizations a practical framework to increase disability confidence. And how do they do that? We act as a free disability recruitment advisor to employers that enter a 12-month partnership with us. We work closely with our partners and focus on building their confidence and capability in disability recruitment. Specific support that the DRC can provide is develop and disseminate job vacancies. The NDRC works with employers to identify opportunities to create vacancies that encourage people with disabilities to apply. We can also work with employers and disability employment service providers to help them develop an ongoing relationship as a ready supply and able job candidates with a disability. We also review existing recruitment practices from the candidate's perspective, checking to see if there is any inadvertent barrier preventing people with disabilities from applying for the roles. We can also develop attraction strategies, reasonable adjustment policy, and internal disability awareness training packages. We provide also ideas on raising awareness of the benefits of employing people with disabilities across the business. Since 2010, the NDRC has partnered with over 360 large organizations, including public and private tertiary education. The JobAccess Employer Toolkit and our website is another freely available resource to support employers who are keen to employ people with a disability in their organizations. The toolkit is designed to support all levels of disability confidence in employers. No matter whether you are hiring a person with a disability for the first time or looking to take the next steps, there is appropriate information available. It is also an extremely versatile resource, as it includes short lesson videos, tips, downloadable resources to support employees with a disability. The Australian Government's Disability Employment Service Program support people with disabilities to find and keep a job by matching them to employers. Over the years, DES has supported tens of thousands of people with disability to join the workforce. The primary function of a provider is a good job fit. So they are there to ensure that both the employee and the employer receive the assistance necessary to address any potential disability-related issue. They are also help remove potential barriers that may get in the way of satisfactory work performance. While it's not all people with disability required support, it's good for employers, service providers, and people with disability to know that this service exists in terms of self-advocacy, in terms of inclusion and diversity goals. To create a truly inclusive workplace, we believe that employees need to feel comfortable and supported to share information about their disability, should they wish to or need to do so. You may have heard of the term disclosure used to describe the process of sharing information about disability. Instead, we refer to sharing of access requirements. This is in keeping with the use of person-first language and putting the focus on the person, not the disability. It is a topic where graduates require the right guidance and advice before they begin their job search process. A recent survey by the Australian Association of Graduate Employers, or AAGE, found that over 50% of students with disability did intend to share disability with their employer. And nearly 70% of students said no, that they will not, while nearly 30% of students weren't sure on what to do. Whilst there is not legal obligation for an employee to share information about their disability, unless it affects their ability to do their job or impacts the safety of their co-workers. In some cases, disability may only become evident once the person is employed. Some people may choose not to share information, and we need to be respectful of that choice if there is no impact in the workplace. Some reasons a person may choose to share their information includes their disability is a core part of their personal identity. It may be that adjustments is required during the interview or the assessment process. The person may need to ask for workplace adjustments or flexibility. Companies may be actively promoting diversity. It's most common once a person has settled in their job, when the person experiences problems with performance or team dynamic. It may be involuntary, or it may be a precautionary measure in case the issue of disability arises on the job. What we hear from the people that we support is that some of the reasons not to sharing the information includes fear of discrimination and stigma, which still exists. Internalized stigma, that self-stigma that is created through all of these systems. Privacy. The disability may not be relevant to workplace or not need for workplace related adjustments. It may be short-term, casual, or a contract position. It may not have a diagnosis or may not consider their condition a disability. Since our launch in July 2006, JobAccess has become a trusted partner in the disability employment space. We have supported over 400,000 people with disabilities and employers with advice and support. JobAccess has managed over 60,000 applications for workplace modifications and adjustments. Our employer engagement team has partnered with over 360 employers to build their experience and disability confidence. Since 2012, we have launched more than 15,000 complaints or reports of abuse through the CRRS and hotline services. Having supported thousands of Australians, including career practitioners and graduates, our team are ready to answer your questions and provide specific advice on your situation. Here are some of the questions we are usually asked about job access and supporting people with disability in the workplace. Is there a limit on how many times an employee can apply for the EAF? There is no limit. There is some guidelines around Auslan interpreting that we know that it's limiting. The main thing I think that is important to remember is that we may adjust a tractor that may cost $200,000 to modify it. But when we look at the real numbers of what we do, about 90% of the modifications are less than $10,000, and about 50% of the modifications are less than $1,000. So these are things that when you know how and what to put in place to remove those barriers, and as I was saying before, with the number of adjustments that we've made as a team, when you know the how, you can actually do it within a limited budget. So I really encourage you to give us a call and have a conversation with one of our professional advisors to see what may work within your workplace. What's the scope of adjustments for physical buildings and facilities through the EAF? There is a really large scope. It will be highly dependent on what type of physical buildings and facilities we will need to modify. It will be highly dependent also on how old the building is, or whether the building managers accept the modifications that we will put in place. So again, the best thing that you can do is call JobAccess, have a conversation with our professional advisors, because every single disability will manifest in a different way in each single individual, and each workplace will have a different circumstance as well that is very specific to their situation. Again, give us a call. We're happy to chat about any of these things through the JobAccess phone line. Can public sector agencies apply for the EAF? That is a commonly asked question, and yes, we do work with a number of workplace agencies, not just through employment and modifications, but also through the National Disability Recruitment Coordinator. We partner with several public sector agencies. We work with federal government, state government, and local government. We've got a wonderful video on YouTube of all the work that the NDRC did with the West Sydney Council, which exemplified the work that the NDRC can do. And yes, we can also provide assistance through the Employment Assistance Fund for modifications and adjustments. How can we get support from JobAccess for a work experience program? This is a little bit tricky because work experience obviously is not work that is that falls within our guidelines. There is some Auslan interpreting that may be provided, but unfortunately, the service is geared for people that will be for more than 13 weeks within within employment, a long-term employment. But the phone line is still there. You can still give us a call. You can still have a conversation with us about what kind of things you may want to think about in terms of the employment of that person. What modifications may be relevant for the person? What kind of hours they may be able to do? How can you provide an environment that will be supportive? All of those things we can still provide support with. How can we support employees with managing mental health in the workplace? Mental health, in many ways, it's about having a supporting work environment. That will be the principal strategy that you may need to require. However, through the Employment Assistance Fund, as I said, you can get $1,500 per eligible employee to put things in place such as communication with a psychologist to develop a plan, to put in place in the workplace. You may want to use it for mental health awareness training. You may want to use it for a number of things that you can do in order to develop that supportive environment. Again, I encourage you to give us a call and understand how JobAccess can support you with mental health, with developing healthy mental health at work. That brings us towards the end of the presentation today. Hopefully, it has provided you with a useful insight into practical support that are available through JobAccess. Once again, I really encourage you to visit our website or speak with one of our advisors if you require any assistance. I would love to answer some questions for the floor. I know that Debbie's already smiling because she's already had a few in there. Happy to answer any of the questions that you may have.
Thanks, Daniel. And I'm a quick learner. I'm off mute now. You would think with all the time we've been doing this, you would get it.
We all do it, Debbie. It's the joys that Zoom is leaving us.
I do it consistently. That's the thing. So no, we do have a few questions coming through. So,
and Debbie, I think that one of the things that is really, really important to highlight before we answer any questions is that JobAccess is for the individual and for the individual job. How does the work look like? What does the workplace look like? Because every single workplace is so different to the next one. And the way that people experience disability is so different, even amongst the same disability type or the same diagnostics. So it is important for people to understand that this is a truly self-centered program that will go to that workplace, will assess that specific person and what the needs are, that specific workplace, and then the recommendations will be made for those modifications and adjustments. So in many ways, many of the times that I get asked questions, the best thing to do is just to simply give us a call and start the process.
I know the phone call. Oh, it's amazing the high caliber of staff with JobAccess. It's always a great pleasure to make the phone call. But talking about individual supports, there was a question that came through about the hybrid workforce that we are now, that we work in an office and then we also work from home. So with the equipment, if that is what required for an adjustment, do you just have the one, or are you able to have a setup into two different locations?
Well, first of all, we will try to look at a setting that the modification can be adjusted at work and can be translated to the house or the place of work that the person has got. We understand that sometimes that is impossible because the modification is too great or it's too extensive. So in many cases, we will provide a second piece of equipment that will be required. As I said, the ethos of JobAccess is to remove barriers to the employment of people with disabilities. And it's really interesting that we had an evaluation done a couple of years back, and that evaluation was extremely positive about what we do at JobAccess. And it was noted that it's an investment of government. It's not an expenditure of government. As I remarked before during the presentation, about 90% of modifications is $10,000 or less, and about 50% of all modifications are less than $1,000. That really means that with very little, we can maintain people with disability at work. We can maintain their productivity, their inclusiveness. We can maintain also, we can maintain them outside of the welfare system as well, which, governments love.
They certainly do. This is an interesting topic that's been discussed a little bit on email, and it's a very valid question. It's around EAF and the dollar allocation for Auslan interpreting or caption support. It's been some time since there's been an increase. The costs of staff have increased, equipment has increased. So is there any insight into anything on the radar in increasing some funds around Auslan? And continuing on from that, is the comparison between EAF funds for captioning in Auslan and NDIS, where they receive a significant more amount of money?
Yeah, and this has been something that has been raised quite regularly. I know that I went to the roundtable with the Minister for DSS and also with the Minister for the NDIA, Bill Shorten, and that was raised several times. It was raised also by the Minister, which leads me to think that is in the radar. It's in the radar as it's never been before. I think that we are facing at the moment a catalyst point. We've got so low unemployment that something needs to be done to move the needle of people with disability unemployment. I think that the government is seeing it as well as that. We had the employment forum on Thursday and Friday. My understanding is that that was raised as an issue. And I think that there will be some commitment to government to review the amount of Auslan interpreting. And you're absolutely right. It is part of our guidelines. It's not something that for us is a flexibility that we can provide as a service provider. But it is in the radar of the right ears at the moment. So hopefully that will move. And you're quite right. It has not changed for 16 years now. So the review is it's well worth it, I think.
Yeah, it's timely, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
We have a question from an organisation who is building their reputation for inclusivity to remove all barriers, and they have a question in relation to how would you encourage new staff with disability to engage before they actually start their job. So on day one, things are up and things are running, and they can get straight into being, a contributor to the team. So the process at the moment is that they will ask once they've been accepted, and that's purely due to the fact that there may be some issues with people not sharing that information earlier on to receive those adjustments. So is there any Daniel?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? We did some really interesting work with Health New South Wales, Health Share New South Wales, and they had a similar problem. People weren't disclosing that they had a disability, and again, that is a word that we should disregard in many ways because it's not something that you are hiding from anybody. It's something that is part of yourself. By memory, they had about 2% of people with disabilities actually disclosing any disability. Health Share New South Wales changed the language to accessible requirements. So what things do I need to be able to do my job? And I think that, as I said before, that is keeping with person-centered language. Because as an employer, to me, it's not important what is the diagnosis of a person. For me, what is important is what do I need to put in place for that person to be able to do their job. So removing that language that is not person-centered was really, really positive for them. And I think that the number of disclosed accessibility requirements increased dramatically after they implement that. And they were able to start putting things in place before people were starting to work. So they had those workplaces ready. There is other organizations also that have developed a accessibility passport. So employees, so that is a centralized way to know what accessibility needs a person may need, whether they are related to disability or not, whether are related to personal life or not. But whichever part of the organization you go, you know, your new manager or your new supervisor will know exactly what the requirements are, so they can prepare the work before the person actually start employment. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but there is several techniques that you can utilize like that to be able to engage employers before you need to put the. And another thing that is important, if the work is going to last for more than 13 weeks and we've got assurance of that, we can actually go in and prepare that workplace with employment assistance funding, so the person with a disability can just transition immediately to that role and kind of start contributing immediately as well.
Right, thank you. Next one, Daniel, is in relation to timelines. So from putting a request into actually having things on the ground and functioning, is there a long time frame for that? And I guess that builds on another question is around delays that have been identified due to assessment and adjustment assessments due to COVID lockdowns. So, and other related impacts in, obtaining all the goods and products. So is there any delays, and what would be the time frame between starting the assessment and having the
it will be highly dependent of what type of assessment is required and what type of equipment will be required. I mean, the assessor may tell us they just need an iPad and, go and buy it and we'll pay you back right away. So they are the kind of things that can be moved fairly quickly. I know that for Auslan interpreting, we can do it within 48 hours, so we can do it fairly quickly. So it will be highly dependent on the type of assessment and the type of adjustments that we will make. We always try to do it as quickly as possible, but sometimes there is delay even from service providers that won't provide us the information that we may require. Right now, the department is also reviewing our guidelines to see if there is any red tape that can be removed, so we can be even nimbler. But I can assure you we are fairly nimble once we receive the information and we send the assessment out. That is a really, really quick process, and we strive to do it as quickly as we can. And hopefully the new review of the guidelines will also remove any red tape. Again, when we were at the round table with the ministers, that's one of the things that got raised, that there was some red tape that was still in there that could be removed, that could be much easier for an employer to utilize JobAccess and also for a person with a disability. And the department has given us commitment to review the guidelines and introduce some changes.
Brilliant. We have a question around if you're able to provide some examples of support that JobAccess has provided to employees with dyslexia and their employers. Yeah, look, we provide equipment we provide equipment such as iPads and tablets and technologies that can actually help a person that has got dyslexia. There are programs now that will read every single thing that you've got. So there is a lot of those type of technologies that can be utilized, and again, they're not at a great cost. They are technologies that are already available now and can be utilized for people to support people. Right. This is around NDRC, and I must say I haven't connected with the National Disability Recruitment Coordinator for some time, but it's around, do you have any stats on jobs advertised and the success of the applicants?
There is some that we've got in there. The problem that we've got with that vacancy program is that we will get the vacancies from the employer, and we will send it to the local network of DES. So it is highly dependent on how much support DES is going to provide that individual in terms of developing their CV, in terms of the quality of candidates that they will put forward and how much preparation they provide them. So it is highly dependent on them as well. So there is some stats, but I don't think that they're a true reflection of what it is. I think those vacancies that we put out there are mainly so employers can start practicing the recruitment of people with disabilities. As the name implies, is the National Disability Recruitment Coordinator. Disability Employment Services are there to employ people with disabilities. So given that that is not our focus, because we focus on the policies, the procedures, and just distributing those vacancies to DES, the statistics I think that are not as telling. But I can tell you, high 90s, it's the statistic that we've got when we survey our employers around whether they feel more comfortable with disability recruitment and disability employment. So employers do feel a lot more comfortable with it once they partner with us. And we've partnered, as I said, with over 360 large businesses. We partner with Australian Post, and we've got a continued relationship with them, universities, TAFEs. We've partnered with schools, we partner with the Department of Education. So we partner with a lot of large employers that feel a lot more confident once they finish our program.
Great.
And it's free.
And I know, it's brilliant. One of the things, just building on from that, you were saying that you've worked a lot with large businesses. Have you done any work with a lot of the universities?
Yes,
I know you mentioned some in the introduction.
Yeah, so we've worked with a number of universities around the country. We've partnered with Monash, we've partnered with UTS, we partner with University of Tasmania, we've partnered with Deakin University in Perth. We've partnered with a lot of universities, so we've got a really deep knowledge in that area, and we also participated in some research on how DES can better support students from tertiary educations to move into employment, which, you know, we're hoping that that is something that will be in the cards should they expand the JobAccess program to support people that are transitioning from students that are transitioning from university into work. But also we know that universities are really large employers, and we want universities to be utilizing the service, not just the adjustments and the modifications, but also the NDRC, so they can review their policy practices. And, you know, and the other thing that we really encourage universities as well, it's about also including disability in terms of the modules that they've got for management, for the Bachelor of Business, Bachelor of Management. The MBA program should have modules around disability employment. I think that universities have got, and tertiary educations have got, a really big part to play in moving the needle and making disability a normal experience of human diversity.
We might have time just for two more, Daniel. We've got a few here. One of them is around inclusive language, and you know, we're looking at requesting adjustments for the student with disability or the employee with disability. But as soon as you put that that request in, you then need to look at the evidence to justify that adjustment. Is there any magic words or ideas that you might be able to
No, and unfortunately, that is one of the things that is driven by the guidelines that government has provided, and we need to follow those guidelines. So some of the language, yeah, I think that it needs to be reviewed, but unfortunately, we're tied to those guidelines, and the department, as I said, is reviewing all of that. So if there is any suggestions that, you know, the person asking the question have, or any experiences that they had that they want to provide us feedback with, we'll be happy to take it to the department and review it within those guidelines.
Excellent. You have to be very quick with this one, and I don't think this is a question. It's a short answer. It's in relation to the obligations of employers to implement and put adjustments in place for their employees. So how is that a little bit different to JobAccess and having that support in providing that equipment and that support?
Yeah, so as I said with the example of the assessment, the ergonomic assessment, if it is something that is just because the person living with a disability has got an impairment that is not for everybody else as well, that modification can come into place for us. So any single thing that the person may need to do their work safely and efficiently and comfortably, that is not related to anybody else. That doesn't that is not a problem that every other employee may have. So, for example, if I want a standing desk, and I'm a person with a disability, it may be provided to me through funding. But if everybody else has got a back problem in my team, that becomes the problem of the employee because of the employer, because it is the way that the job is being designed, and they need to then look for the solutions.
Thanks, Daniel. We'll have to wrap it up then, but we could talk for ages, and we'll still have lots of questions coming through. So thank you, everybody, for being so active in the chat and the questions, and really making this a really interactive session. Daniel, always a great pleasure to work with you. Thank you again for another informative presentation. Highlights, you know, not only the great services that you provide Australia-wide, but also the calibre of staff that you've engaged with JobAccess to really deliver high quality service. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
To both Auslan interpreters, amazing. Thank you very much for being with us, and for Sharon Bradley reporting, doing our captioning. Appreciate you all being with us today. Remember, if you like this type of webinar and you'd like to know more, please sign up to the Adsense newsletter. I know that was in the chat earlier on, but we might be able to find that and put that towards the end as well. So thank you for that. As again, I really appreciate being with everyone today, everyone taking time from their schedule to see how we can really embed people with disability in all our organisations and really benefit from the diverse and the wealth of knowledge and experience they bring. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon, and ADCET and the NDCO program hope to see you at a future event. So if you are interested, again, in the recording, it will be on the ADCET website in the coming days. Thank you again, everybody, and wishing you a great afternoon.